I found out my ex-wife is pregnant with my brother's baby and my parents want me to give them my trust fund money, but I froze all my accounts and got a lawyer. Then my dad tried to forge my signature to steal my $180,000 inheritance to give to my brother. I'm Tyler, 31M, and I need to write this down because I can't believe what just happened to me. Last weekend changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Some background first. I've been living in Seattle for the past 2 years working in tech after my divorce from Sarah, 29F. We were married for 3 years but things fell apart when we couldn't agree on having kids. She wanted them immediately and I wanted to wait until we were more financially stable. The divorce was messy but we managed to split everything fairly. I kept the house, she took her car and some savings. My family lives back in Ohio where I grew up. There's my parents Janet, 58F, and Robert, 61M, my older brother Derek, 34M, and my younger sister Emma, 26F. Derek has always been the favorite child. He played football in high school, went to state college on a partial scholarship, and works as a mechanic now. My parents act like he can do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid who got good grades and went to a private university. They paid for Derek's car, his apartment deposit, and helped him with money countless times over the years. When my grandfather died 5 years ago, he left me a trust fund worth about $180,000. He always said I was the responsible one and wanted to make sure I had something for my future. My parents weren't happy about this. They made comments about how Derek could have used that money more, how I already had a good job and didn't need it. I never touched the money except to pay for my divorce lawyer and some house repairs. So last month, Emma called me and said she was having a baby shower and really wanted me to come home for it. She'd been dating her boyfriend Jake for 2 years and they just got engaged. I hadn't been home in 8 months and felt guilty about missing family events, so I booked a flight for last weekend. The first red flag was when I texted my mom that I'd landed and was heading to their house. She just sent back a thumbs up emoji. No excitement, no asking about my flight, nothing. When I got to the house, the front door was unlocked, which never happens because my dad is paranoid about break-ins. I walked in and there were already people there even though the shower wasn't supposed to start for another hour. The moment I stepped into the living room, everyone went quiet. My dad was standing by the kitchen holding a plate of sandwiches and just nodded at me without saying hello. Emma came over and gave me this weird fake hug and said hey in a voice that sounded forced. My mom was arranging flowers and barely looked up. Then I saw Sarah sitting on the couch. My ex-wife. At my sister's baby shower. She was obviously pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 months along. Derek was sitting right next to her with his arm around her shoulders. I asked what was going on. My mom suddenly got excited and started clapping her hands. She said they had wonderful news and that Sarah and Derek were having a baby together. She said the family was so happy because they were finally getting a grandchild. Then my dad said they had something else to tell me. He said they'd been talking and decided that since Derek and Sarah were starting a family, they needed financial help more than I did. He said they were going to change the beneficiary on my trust fund to Derek and Sarah because babies are expensive. I told them they couldn't do that. The trust fund was left to me specifically by Grandpa. My mom said Grandpa would have wanted the money to go to his first great-grandchild. My dad said I was being selfish and that I made plenty of money in Seattle. Emma laughed and said Sarah finally found the right brother. Derek squeezed Sarah's hand and told me thanks for letting her go so she could be with someone who actually wanted a family. Sarah just sat there looking uncomfortable but didn't say anything. I started raising my voice asking how long this had been going on. Derek said they'd been together for about 6 months. That meant they got together right around the time Sarah's divorce papers were finalized. I asked if this was why Sarah had been so eager to rush the divorce process. My mom told me to calm down and said this was supposed to be a celebration. My dad said I needed to be happy for them and sign the papers to transfer the trust fund. Derek stood up and said I should be grateful they were even telling me instead of just doing it behind my back. I lost it and called Derek a snake. I said he'd been trying to compete with me his whole life and now he was stealing my ex-wife and my inheritance. Derek got in my face and said Sarah chose him because he was man enough to give her what she wanted. I shoved him and he shoved me back. My mom started screaming at us to stop fighting. Emma was filming everything on her phone. Sarah was crying and saying she didn't want drama. My dad grabbed my arm and told me if I couldn't be civil, I could find somewhere else to stay. I went upstairs to get my suitcase from the guest room. Derek followed me and blocked the doorway. He said I always thought I was better than everyone because I went to college and moved away. He said now Sarah would see what a real man looks like. I pushed past him and grabbed my stuff. When I came back downstairs, my dad was holding some legal papers. He said they'd already contacted a lawyer and started the process to transfer the trust fund. All I had to do was sign and everything would be settled. My mom said it would be easier if I just agreed instead of making this difficult for everyone. I told them I wasn't signing anything and walked out. I slammed the door so hard that the wreath fell off and shattered on the porch. I drove to a hotel and booked a room for the night. Nobody called me that evening. Nobody texted to check if I was okay or to apologize. Emma posted pictures from the baby shower on Facebook like nothing had happened. Sarah and Derek looked happy in every photo. I flew back to Seattle the next morning. I kept waiting for someone to reach out and explain or apologize, but my phone stayed quiet. It's been a week now and the only contact I've had is a voicemail from my dad asking me to call him back so we can talk about the trust fund situation. I feel like my entire family just ambushed me. They planned this whole thing knowing I'd be upset but figured they could pressure me into giving up my inheritance. The worst part is finding out that Derek and Sarah have been together for months while I was still dealing with the aftermath of our divorce. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to cut contact with all of them, but they're still my family. At the same time, I can't believe they thought they could just take my inheritance and give it to Derek because he's having a baby. Has anyone dealt with something like this? How do you handle family members who try to steal from you? Update 1. I got a lot of good advice on my last post, so I wanted to update everyone on what's happened since then. The Monday after I got back to Seattle, I got a notification on my banking app that there was a pending change to my account. When I called the bank, they told me someone had submitted a request to change the beneficiary and account authority on my trust fund. They said it required my signature and ID verification to go through, but they wanted to let me know it had been requested. I immediately went to the bank branch near my office. The manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, pulled up my account and showed me the paperwork. It was a request to transfer primary authority to Robert, my dad, with Derek listed as the new beneficiary. Mrs. Rodriguez said this wasn't the first time someone had tried to access my account. Apparently, Derek had called 2 weeks ago asking questions about the balance and trying to get information about how to access the funds. I signed documents to freeze any changes to the account and added extra security measures. Mrs. Rodriguez said they'd flag my account so that any future requests would require me to appear in person with 2 forms of ID. When I got home, there were 3 voicemails from my dad. In the first one, he said we needed to talk about the beneficiary changes and that it wasn't a big deal. In the second one, he sounded annoyed and said I was being difficult. The third one was him saying I had until Friday to call him back or they'd move forward without me. I decided to get ahead of their narrative. I texted my cousin Miguel, who lives near my parents. Miguel has always been the family gossip and I knew anything I told him would spread quickly. I told him that my family was trying to pressure me into giving up my inheritance and that I hadn't agreed to any changes. By Tuesday evening, my Aunt Rosa was texting me asking what was going on. She said Miguel had told her there was drama about Grandpa's trust fund. I gave her the basic facts, that Derek and Sarah were together and having a baby, and that my parents wanted me to give them my inheritance. Rosa was shocked. She said she couldn't believe Sarah was with Derek so soon after our divorce. She also said Grandpa would be rolling over in his grave if he knew they were trying to take the money he specifically left to me. Wednesday morning, I changed all my passwords on every account I could think of. Bank accounts, email, social media, credit cards, everything. I enabled 2-factor authentication and removed my parents' phone numbers as backup contacts. While I was going through old emails, I found messages from Derek asking to borrow money for car repairs, rent, and other expenses over the past few years. I also found emails from my dad asking for loans for home improvements that never seemed to happen. I saved screenshots of everything. Thursday, Derek called from a blocked number. He said I was making this situation worse than it needed to be and that I should just sign the papers. He said Sarah was stressed about the pregnancy and my stubbornness was affecting her health. When I told him it wasn't my problem, he called me selfish and hung up. Friday, Emma texted saying I was causing problems for everyone and needed to stop being petty. She said Sarah was family now and deserved my support. I replied that Sarah stopped being my family when we divorced and I didn't owe her anything. Emma said I was being cruel and that I'd always been jealous of Derek. Saturday, I decided to go get my mail from my parents' house since I still had some things being delivered there. When I pulled up, Derek's truck was in the driveway. I went to the front door and rang the bell. My mom answered and her face went pale when she saw me. She said they weren't expecting me and that it wasn't a good time. I told her I just needed to get my mail and would be gone in 5 minutes. She reluctantly let me in. Derek came out of the kitchen and immediately got aggressive. He said I had no business coming to the house after the way I'd acted. I ignored him and asked my mom where my mail was. She pointed to a pile on the hall table. As I was sorting through the mail, Derek kept talking. He said I was acting like a spoiled brat and that I needed to accept that things had changed. He said Sarah was happy with him in a way she never was with me. He said I could keep being bitter or I could be part of the family. I finished with the mail and headed for the door. Derek stepped in front of me and said we weren't done talking. I told him to move and he said I needed to hear what he had to say. I pushed past him and he grabbed my shoulder. My mom started telling us to stop but neither of us paid attention. Derek said I'd always thought I was better than him but now Sarah could see who the real man was. I shoved him hard and he stumbled backward. He came back swinging and caught me in the shoulder. I shoved him again and he hit the wall. My mom was screaming at us to stop fighting. Sarah came out of the kitchen looking upset and told Derek to let me leave. My dad came in from the garage and told me I needed to get out of his house. I left with my mail and drove home. Later that evening, my mom texted saying I'd ruined another family gathering and that I needed to grow up. She said Derek and Sarah were trying to build a life together and I was making it harder for everyone. I didn't respond to her text. I've decided I'm done trying to explain myself to them. They made their choice when they decided to ambush me and try to steal my inheritance. Now they're dealing with the consequences. I also contacted our old family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, and explained the situation. He said the trust fund is legally mine and that my parents have no authority to change it without my consent. He advised me not to sign anything and to document any harassment or threats. The house has been quiet since Saturday. Nobody has called or texted. I think they're finally realizing I'm not going to just roll over and give them what they want. Update 2. Things have escalated since my last update and I wanted to share what's been happening. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a loan officer at a local bank in Ohio. She said Derek had applied for a car loan and listed me as a character reference. She wanted to verify that I knew him and could speak to his financial responsibility. I told her that Derek was my brother but that I wouldn't recommend him for any loans. I also mentioned that he had a history of borrowing money and not paying it back on time. The loan officer sounded surprised and said she'd make a note in his file. I asked if I could send her documentation of Derek's borrowing history and she said it might be helpful for their decision. I emailed her the screenshots of all the times Derek had asked me for money over the years. Derek must have found out his loan was denied because he called me from a different number the next day. He was furious and accused me of sabotaging his life. He said he needed a car for work and that I was being vindictive. I told him he should have thought about that before trying to steal my inheritance. Around the same time, my cousin Miguel called to tell me there was drama at my Aunt Rosa's birthday party. Apparently, Derek and Sarah showed up and several family members started asking questions about the trust fund situation. Miguel said Derek got defensive and started telling people I was being selfish and greedy. But Rosa's husband, my uncle Carlos, said he remembered when Grandpa set up the trust and that it was specifically meant for me. Miguel said there was an awkward moment when Derek claimed that Grandpa would have wanted the money to go to his great-grandchild. But Carlos pointed out that Grandpa had been very clear about wanting me to have financial security since I was the only one who'd gone to college and moved away from home. The conversation apparently got heated and Derek and Sarah left early. Miguel said other family members were talking afterward and most of them thought it was wrong for my parents to try to take my inheritance. Last week, Emma's husband Josh texted me out of nowhere. He said Emma had been stressed about the family situation and asked if there was any way to resolve things peacefully. I told him there was nothing to resolve, the trust fund was mine and that was the end of it. Josh said he understood my position but that Emma felt caught in the middle. I found out later that Emma had been getting pressure from my parents to talk to me. Apparently, they thought she could convince me to be reasonable. When Emma realized I wasn't going to budge, she stopped trying to mediate. The big incident happened 5 days ago. I needed to get some tools I'd left in my dad's garage, so I drove over on a Saturday morning. I figured most people would be sleeping in and I could grab my stuff without drama. When I got there, Derek's truck was parked outside again. I went to the front door but it was locked. I could hear voices inside but nobody answered when I knocked. I walked around to the garage and used the side door since I still had a key. My dad was in the garage organizing tools. He looked startled when I walked in and asked what I was doing there. I told him I needed to get my socket set and circular saw. He said I should have called first. Before I could respond, Derek came into the garage from the house. He immediately started yelling at me for showing up unannounced. He said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and needed to leave. I ignored him and started looking for my tools. Derek kept talking, saying I was causing stress for Sarah and that it wasn't good for the baby. He said I was being selfish and that Grandpa would be ashamed of me. I found my tools and headed for the door, but Derek stepped in my way again. This time, my dad didn't try to stop us. Derek shoved me and I shoved back harder. He stumbled and knocked over a shelf of paint cans. My dad finally spoke up and told Derek to back off, But then he told me not to come back to the house without calling first. I left with my tools and haven't been back since. I also changed my emergency contact information at work and with my insurance company so they can't access any of my personal information. Yesterday, Mr. Patterson called me. He said my dad had contacted him asking about the trust fund and whether there was any way to challenge Grandpa's will. Mr. Patterson told him the trust was ironclad and that any attempt to contest it would be expensive and unsuccessful. But here's the concerning part. Mr. Patterson said my dad had asked about getting a copy of my financial records. When Mr. Patterson refused, my dad asked if there was another lawyer who might be more helpful. Mr. Patterson warned me that my parents might try to find someone else to help them access my accounts. I've scheduled a meeting with Mr. Patterson next week to discuss getting a restraining order if my family keeps harassing me. He said I have enough documentation to show a pattern of financial manipulation and intimidation. The whole situation has affected other relationships too. Sarah's mom called me last week asking if the rumors about Derek and Sarah were true. When I confirmed it, she sounded shocked. She said she'd wondered why Sarah had been so eager to finalize our divorce quickly but hadn't wanted to pry. Sarah's mom also said she was concerned about Sarah's judgment. She said Derek seemed nice enough but that Sarah was rushing into another serious relationship very quickly after our marriage ended. She asked if I thought Sarah was happy, and honestly, I told her I didn't know and didn't really care anymore. My parents have been quiet for the past few days. Emma posted some passive-aggressive stuff on social media about family loyalty and forgiveness, but she hasn't contacted me directly. Derek changed his relationship status on Facebook to engaged, which tells me he and Sarah are moving fast. I'm done trying to salvage relationships with people who see me as an ATM. They made their choice when they decided to try to steal from me, and now they're dealing with the consequences. Update 3. I'm writing this final update because the situation has reached its conclusion and I doubt there will be any more developments. 3 weeks after my last post, Mr. Patterson called with disturbing news. He said someone had tried to forge my signature on documents requesting access to my trust fund account. The bank had rejected the paperwork immediately because the signature didn't match their records, but they were required to report the attempted fraud. Mr. Patterson said the documents had been submitted by a law firm in Ohio that my parents had hired. When the bank contacted them about the forged signature, the law firm claimed they'd received the documents from my parents and assumed they were legitimate. The law firm dropped my parents as clients immediately. I filed a police report for attempted fraud. The detective said it was clearly a family dispute but that forgery was still a crime regardless of the relationship. He said they'd investigate but warned me that proving intent might be difficult. 2 days later, Derek called me from yet another number. He said I was destroying the family and that my mom was having panic attacks because of the stress. He said Sarah was worried about the pregnancy complications from all the drama. He accused me of being vindictive and caring more about money than family. I recorded the call and told Derek that if anyone contacted me again, I'd get a restraining order. Derek said I was making empty threats and that I'd eventually come crawling back because I had no real friends in Seattle. He said the family would never forgive me for choosing money over a new baby. That call was the last direct contact I had with any of them. But I found out what's been happening through Miguel and Rosa. Apparently, my parents' marriage has been strained. My mom blamed my dad for pushing too hard with the trust fund situation. My dad blamed my mom for not being more supportive when he tried to forge the signature. They've been sleeping in separate bedrooms and barely speaking to each other. Derek and Sarah's relationship has also been rocky. Sarah's pregnancy has been difficult and she's been on partial bed rest. Derek has been working extra hours to save money for the baby, but without the loan for a new car, he's been having transportation problems. Sarah's mom has been helping with doctor appointments and groceries. Emma has been trying to stay neutral, but Josh told Miguel that she feels guilty about filming our first fight and posting about the family drama on social media. Emma apparently told Josh that she should have minded her own business instead of getting involved. The most recent development happened last week. Rosa called to tell me that Derek and Sarah had a huge fight at a family barbecue. Apparently, Derek had been drinking and started complaining loudly about me ruining his life. Sarah got upset and said she was tired of hearing about me all the time. She said Derek needed to focus on their future instead of being angry about the past. Derek reportedly said that if Sarah hadn't been so materialistic about wanting financial security, none of this would have happened. Sarah started crying and said she never asked him to steal from me. Other family members got uncomfortable and the barbecue ended early. Rosa said Derek left alone and Sarah went home with her mom. Nobody knows if they've talked since then, but Derek hasn't been posting about being engaged anymore. Last weekend, I got a certified letter from my parents. It was formal and cold, saying they were disappointed in my choices and that I'd shown my true character. They said they were removing me from their will and that I shouldn't contact them anymore. They said I should be grateful for everything they'd done for me over the years and that I'd thrown it all away for money. The letter felt like a relief. They were officially cutting me off, which is exactly what I wanted. I wasn't getting anything from their will anyway since they'd already made it clear Derek was their priority. I've been living peacefully in Seattle. I bought a new car with some of the trust fund money and took a vacation to Japan that I'd been planning for years. Work has been going well and I got a promotion last month. I haven't contacted anyone in my family and I don't plan to. Miguel and Rosa still keep me updated occasionally, but I've asked them not to share information about my life with my parents or Derek. The trust fund is still secure and I've made sure my will leaves everything to charity. If something happens to me, my parents won't see a penny of Grandpa's money. I learned that blood doesn't make people family. Real family doesn't try to steal from you or manipulate you into giving up what's rightfully yours. My parents chose Derek and Sarah over me, and now they're dealing with the consequences of that choice. I'm not bitter about it anymore. I'm just glad I found out who they really were before they could do more damage. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and that's exactly what happened here. For anyone dealing with family members who try to manipulate or steal from you, document everything, get legal help, and don't feel guilty about protecting yourself. You don't owe anyone your financial security, even if they're related to you. I'm done with this chapter of my life and looking forward to whatever comes next.